Okay, welcome everyone. And this is going to be a relatively informal session. And I think different people were hoping might get different things out of it. But the main thing we want to do is to help people relieve some of the anxiety that we've been seeing in various discussion boards on Facebook and other conversations about the transition. We're moving to a new platform that's going to offer a lot of new capabilities and that I think in many ways is dramatically more intuitive and easy to use. Let me just mute. Okay, that's dramatically easier to use than the Blackboard interface, which was designed by programmers who seem to know very little about what goes on in colleges and instruction. Desire to Learn is a much more friendly interface, and it's going to offer a lot of new tools. So we just like people to get a little comfortable and just to have the opportunity to play with it. Now, is there anyone who did not get the handout?
I didn't get the handout.
Okay, I will put a copy of it in chat then. Let me just grab that. Disk IO error. That's not good. Why is there a disk IO error? Because I have it opened. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so now if you don't have the handout, you should be able to go to the chat window, click on it, and you may want to enable content, and then you'll have the instructions that we're going to be using initially. And the first thing to do is to create a sandbox. Has everyone created that sandbox account? That was in the instructions on the description for this workshop and so forth. Is there anyone who has not yet created a handout, created the sandbox account? If so, I can send some instructions on that. Any question? Everyone have that?
And if you don't, you can quickly make one. Just put the link to
let's
log in.
Okay, let me just copy the link and put that in the chat too again for the people who just came in. Okay, so there is a link in the chat now where you can go and very quickly create an account. And when you create that, it will create 2 course shells. One is a blank one, which we're going to be using now, and the other is a sample one, which is already pre-filled, so that you could see what a course in progress looks like, where it has some sample submissions and assignments and so forth, just so you could get a feel for what it's going to look like when you're actually using this. Now, there's several caveats we should mention. Copying your course over from Blackboard may not be the best way to build a course. You might want to completely rebuild the course to take advantage of some of the new features we have. You may have a lot of clutter in your old course that you probably don't want to move over. But if you do have a lot of content, it's good to be able to take what you have and move it in just so you'll be ready for, so that you won't have to recreate everything. And it does a pretty nice job of transferring things. One other thing we should note is that this is not a full version of, it's not the full version that we'll be using. It doesn't have any of the add-ins. It's a very generic, very basic Sandbox course, which only shows you the basic tools. When we finally get access to the full SUNY version of it, it will have more things added in. It will have things like for sharing videos. It will have the integrations with various publishers. None of that is there yet. So we will be getting many new features. And so if you try to export some things that are tied to the integrations we have in our current Blackboard, those things will not be enabled at this point, at least. So with those caveats, we can go forward. So Ramin, do you want to share the screen or would you like me to? Either way.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Okay. Just a quick addition to the things John said. I established a Sandbox account with D2L back in October when we learned that we were going to move to it, just to explore how everything worked. And I tried to export the course from Blackboard at that time and import it into that Sandbox account. And I totally botched it up, so what you're learning from me today is the right way to do it. And hopefully you can successfully move your course, and all the things that you really desire to keep will be in desire to learn. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to move you guys over to a different screen just so that you don't have to see our faces. Can everybody see the D2L BrightSpace window? Okay. So we're going to be logging into this, but the first portion of the instructions really has to do with Blackboard. So my recommendation at this point is for you all to have a window open in Chrome or whatever and log into Blackboard. The other thing I will say is that the instructions that John shared with you, some aspects of it are platform dependent, meaning, the way I save stuff on a PC may not be the way you save stuff on a Mac or whatever other machine you may be using. So take those instructions with a grain of salt. You obviously first visit the course that you may wish to export. So in my case, I taught CSE 212 back in fall of 21. So I visit that course just very quickly. It obviously has a syllabus and it has course modules, and course modules have all kinds of interesting things in them, submodules, videos, and so forth. So there's a ton of content in this particular course, which frankly, I had really no desire to repeat again in some other platform. So even though I really appreciate what John said about building up a course from scratch, I didn't feel that would be good for me. So all of you should take both of those advice, both from John and I, to heart in whatever you decide to do and whatever pattern works best for you. But for me, I really didn't want to repeat this content again because it took a long time to build. So the first thing you do is on the left nav, visit the packages and utilities. That's where you want to be. So when you click that, it gives you a bunch of options, and one of them has to be export /archive course. And you can see all my different attempts at exporting this particular course. So they're all sitting right there. But if you issue an export package or export course, sorry. And what I did, or what I recommend everybody to do, is to do a select all. The data from the students doesn't come over, but all the content comes over, and discussion starters come over. Anything that you build, I found this to be better than trying to be selective in content, establishing what content I want to export. So once you click select all and proceed to submit.
If you go back just a step, one other thing I might recommend, it may not matter, but in this thing with files outside of the course default directory, I would probably switch to the one where it's to copy files and copy and include copies of files that are outside the course directory, default directory, just for safety, because that way you're not just getting links that might no longer exist after the transfer. For most people, that's probably not going to apply, but it might be just a little bit safer.
Okay, good point, John. I didn't find that this process took very long, but it does queue this up when you do that request, and but it should produce a file, export file with the right term and CRN and course and so on. And there should be a date created associated with it when it's finished. And I got an email from Blackboard when I did that. So you should have an email from Blackboard admin. Hopefully you can see my screen now, right at the very top. So when you go back and just click refresh, I think it should have the new course in there, the new export in there, but I don't have it yet. But you got to wait for that, right? I mean, until you have that zip file, there isn't a whole lot that we can actually do. So let's take a minute or two for people to perhaps acknowledge that they have their export file, John. I think that would be a good move instead of moving on.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, basically it's just doing an export, which is a common cartridge.
Yeah, and these files are 4 or 5 megs typically. They're not really that big, and BrightSpace, the Sandbox, allows you to bring in as much as 2 gigs. So you really shouldn't have any space issues. I suppose some of the heavy users may be in a different place than me, but I had a lot of videos there and it still wasn't overwhelming.
Can I ask you a question? If we're exporting something, does that mean it's still there? Is everything still there in Blackboard? I'm not dismantling my Blackboard accounts, but this exercise.
This is just taking a copy of it and sharing it so that you can import it or preserve it for the future.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, while we're at that topic, though, I really recommend for all of you, given that Blackboard, when it goes away, is going to go away, you probably want to export all of your courses that you may want to get your hands on. So even though in this exercise, we're just doing one, you probably should, in effect, backing up all of your courses, because even though I think we have some really good people and they may be able to figure out how to get it back for you a year from now, we're not going to have Blackboard. So,
and a related note is that while there will be some form of archiving, I'm sure that will be done on campus, it's not clear how far that will go back. And if there's courses that you only teach occasionally that are not in your last couple of years of rotations, you may want to just archive all of those old ones and so forth. And Greg made a comment, which I was just going to say, actually, is that this will export only the course content. It doesn't export any information about students who were in your courses. So you should certainly go back in and export your grade books, download them as Excel files for all the courses where you're likely to ever have any sort of a grade dispute, as Greg mentions, or when a student 5 or 10 or 20 years from now asks you for a letter of reference, it's nice to be able to look back and see any comments and any grades that you provided for them. So, and as Teresa noted, our instructional designers are doing a workshop on that. But while everyone's here, those are good things just to do in general so that you'll have your own archive of this information, not just of the course content, but also of student performance in the class.
That's a good point, John. So how's everybody doing? Maybe gives us a thumbs up or something to know whether or not the export was made for you. Okay. So I think you just click on the thing and it downloads it into your account, into your computer, sorry. And I believe for most of us, it's just going to put it in your download directory. So it should look something like this guy. Hopefully you see that export file that I had downloaded, I think just yesterday. So you're going to have an export file like that. Everybody good there? So once you have established that export and you have the course cartridge as a zip file available to you, then you can log into the D2L BrightSpace account that you've already made. And as John shared with you a link to create an account, it just takes a little while or pretty quick or whatever to establish one. I think they expect you to use your email and make up a password or something. I believe that's what I did. I did it a while ago, so I can't be 100% certain there. So when you log in, you should have two courses in this sandbox. The one on the left is what they call a sample course with data. The one on the right is called an empty course shell. And if you're uploading a course, my clear and hopefully obvious recommendation is to use the empty course shell to do it. The last thing you need is a kind of a mix-up of gradebook information from the sample course and the content along with the content you are uploading yourself. So once you click on that, and obviously in my case, I have stuff in here because I've already done this. I'm just gonna do this to my screen so I could see this button. So for importing the admin tools, it looks like a typical settings type of a button. The admin tool is the one that lets you get to that. So if you just click that, the very second option should be the import, export, copy components option. So you want to pick that, and you're importing components, right? The page is designed to do any of three things. The only one that applies to us, and we are importing a course package. So remember that this is a course package coming from Blackboard. I know it's a little confusing. The first time I did this, I was really totally unsure if this was going to do anything at all, because it's not obvious that you could bring a Blackboard course into this thing, but you can. So if you proceed to, if I bring my screen up a little bit and click start, you have the option to upload. And of course, this is when you upload, going back to the downloads area, whatever the zip file was, and you click open, right? That's how you do that. And after you do that, you import all components. This is going to take a good 10 minutes, right? I mean, I don't think if you have enough content, it's going to take much less. It really does an excellent job of bringing it in, but it does take about 10 minutes. So again, we should probably pause as you wait for this import to actually successfully take place. But yeah.
Stupid question.
There is no such a thing as a stupid question, Magdalena.
Yes, I know. So when I exported the course, it actually opened like a folder. It's not in my downloads for some reason. It is just opened as a zip file or zip folder. Do I need to extract it or something?
It resides somewhere, so you just need to track down where it's residing. Usually,
it's like in temp. Yeah.
Okay, it sounds like you opened the file when it came in, but the file will download as a zip file. If you're on a Mac and you click on it, well, on most systems, if you click on it, it will open the zip file and you'll see it, but you don't need to open it. Just leave it in the download folder. You don't have to unzip it.
So from Blackboard, let's see. Does it say? I don't see the download.
Are you using Chrome?
Oh, it is. Okay, it is. It isn't downloads, but I don't know where that is. No, I'm using Firefox.
Okay. It should probably still go to the download folder unless you change the location of downloads.
Okay, well.
Do you want to share your screen, Magdalena, for us to investigate with you, or?
Sure.
So scary.
And meanwhile, there were a couple of questions in chat. One question is, can we export community groups? And I don't think we know at that point. I've done a little bit of searching on that, and it's probably called something different. They've got a lot of capabilities, including the abilities to do virtual portfolios for student e-portfolios and other things. I'd be really surprised if they don't have that. And there was a note that the times have changed. I believe, as in Blackboard, you have the ability to do a global date change. I'm not sure about the time changes for due dates. That's something we'll learn more about as we move further into the process. And Liz is noting it's taking a while, and it will take a little bit of time because it's
Liz, it took maybe 15 minutes for me until it totally went all the way.
Finished. Yeah, mine just finished. So yeah, I was noticing because some people were saying that they had a gig, that their course was a gig. Maybe they have a lot of visuals or videos or something, but that's going to take a while. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, well, my videos don't really reside in my course. I don't have MP4s.
Right, me neither. Me neither. And I guess that was my question. I guess I can go look, but like if you're hosting videos on Panopto, are those coming over right now, or potentially they'll be set up to be able to bring in the folder?
Assuming Panopto is not going away, which I have not heard that it would, we should still be able to use those links in BrightSpace. Those links will still work.
And things will get a little bit complicated in that SUNY is trying to move to single providers of resources. So there will probably be one streaming video service for all of SUNY that will be integrated with this. And it's not clear. There's some concerns that may limit campus flexibility, and the goal is to provide an interface which will be the same for students no matter which platform they're working on. So by having only one provider of streaming video services, which Panopto is probably the most commonly used one, so it's likely that will persist, and certainly will have it at least for some time. It's not clear how that will be integrated, but all the files should still be there, and that integration should, well, we expect it will work, or there'll be some effort made to make sure that all connects properly.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually going direct link to class recordings. Okay, they're here by some miracle.
Okay.
Yeah, so they must follow the link. Well, no, this was actually, I had a hyperlink to the classroom. Instead of just embedding it, I actually copied the link, and that actually went over. And so those recordings.
Right. Any links URL should port. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
We should go back to Magdalena. Magdalena, dear.
Sorry, Magdalena.
Did your situation get fixed?
Yeah, I think I figured it out.
And as Teresa noted in chat again, that third-party tools have not yet been determined. About a month or so ago, they requested each campus provide them with a list of what tools they were using, and they're going to go through that list. And at some point, they will narrow down what tools they're going to support centrally. There may be some campus flexibility on additional tools. That's entirely unknown at this point. So
have most people been able to successfully do their upload of their course package?
Okay, I have a new problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I have the zip file saved and I put it in the upload, but now I can't really, there's import all components, advanced options, and cancel, and it does not let me click import all components. And it's not, the file is not too big. It is.
Are you sure it's all the way done copying? Because mine wouldn't either, and I had to wait a little while for it to finish uploading.
Okay.
Other questions or situations? So when it does conclude, obviously the navigation is different, as you would expect, than what you had in Blackboard. But you should have a couple of familiar folders here. One of them is your course information, and the syllabus should look like whatever syllabus you had before, I expect. it looked the same for me. And critically for me was the course modules, and you can see the design, the basics, solving problems with objects, solving problems with selection and iteration. You see those options. These are all folders within my course. And if you further expand that, then you're in module 1, plan, and where I articulate what is due when and so on. And then there are subfolders, they're all there. Contents like lesson 1 is there. And the videos are also there. And apparently I have to log into Panopto for you to see it. So, but you get the idea. I didn't, as far as I could tell, I didn't lose anything. And furthermore, I actually did have my grade list information in. Am I in the right course? These are not my students, by the way. So, but programming assignment, midterm, final, quiz, etc. They all came over, and obviously I didn't really delve into it, but they look correct.
Ramin, does the organization, because it seems like my file structure did not, like they're all there, but they're all like kind of out of order.
Yeah.
Is that just me? Of course it is.
No, you're going to have to rearrange them a bit.
Okay,
So
got
it ports over the content, but
Right.
you can rebuild it and restructure it later.
Right, because I also noticed that I have something that was a file attachment question, and it's now it's like a text box question, but.
What about the
Yeah.
quizzes? Are they going to move over as quizzes or?
Quizzes should move over pretty clearly. The only issue is one that Casey has run into, which is that if you're using questions where there's multiple randomly generated variables, then they don't port over. As long as you only have a single random variable used in your questions, it should port nicely, but it doesn't work as well. It doesn't work when you're using multiple ones. But in general, most of the quiz type questions seem to port very well.
Okay,
Much better than
even
it
when
did.
they have like math in them, which for some reason in my exported file, I had a whole bunch of like image files, and each image file would just have like one equation in it, like x is less than or equal to 3, would just download as a separate image file for some reason.
The only way to be sure is to actually check that. But
I know, yeah, I'm still waiting.
okay, but images should port. It's better to use MathML or LaTeX for those questions, for accessibility purposes. Although if you have tags on them, it should be okay on the images.
I don't know, I just created that with whatever the math interface was in Blackboard.
Okay, that should create it as, I think that's using MathML and LaTeX.
Maybe it was
So
PDF.
something interesting, I think, going back to my question about the times, something interesting that I noticed was that before the time change, the assignments are due at 6:59. After the time change, the assignments are due at 7:59. So, I mean, it's easily, I can edit the time and dates, but I believe it gives you 3 days before the actual assignment is due, comes onto your calendar too. So we can change that in settings, I believe.
Yes. And there are some really nice tools where you can send automated reminders. There's agents where things will open up. We're getting back a lot of the tools we lost when we migrated from Angel to Blackboard a few years back. So how are your imports going? Have they all been imported, or are they still in progress?
I'm just a bit behind. And so I think Greg asked the question that export as a common cartridge is the selection for import, export, and copy components?
Well, is that in Blackboard? I think that's the only way of exporting. In Desire to Learn, it gives you the option of how to export, but in Desire to Learn, you're not going to be exporting, you're just importing. So in Blackboard, you just choose, click on export package, although actually there is the export common cartridge option. I suspect either should work, because I think the export by default is a common cartridge, isn't it? Isn't it, Greg?
Michael, just, do you see, do you see my screen okay?
Yeah, I figured it out. I got confused on the new interface.
Yeah, I can only tell you what I was successful with. So,
Ramin, if I can just interject for a second to go back to John's question. You do have to pay attention to this because you are asked to choose between the Blackboard cartridge or the common cartridge. And you do want to make sure you're selecting the common cartridge because that is what Desire to Learn is looking for. So that is an important thing to pay attention to there.
Except what Ramin just did is he exported the Blackboard cartridge and Desire to Learn imports that.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
I agree. I agree, but I'm going by Desire to Learn's documentation. So okay. I'm playing it safe because there's a lot we haven't tested yet, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Greg, you know me. I don't read documentation.
I know. You just go for it. It's just fun to watch.
I'm a lot braver than that. So this is what we got. It worked. It really imported fine. I mean, so if it didn't, I wouldn't be here talking to you all about it. So.
Ramin, so your tests did finally come in correctly?
It looked like they came in. I really didn't go back and review all of them. I just looked at a couple.
Well, it's just because I remember when you did it that one day, you said there were issues with your tests or quizzes.
Yeah,
and
well, that was a great attempt at doing it wrong back in October. So this time it worked way better.
I can tell you in my preview, not a single calculated formula question is coming through. They're giving me an error on every single one. And there's
okay.
So some things didn't work. All right.
No, and that's like a big thing for me and for some other people. We have courses full of them.
So, right, and I think that's where we will get more guidance from D2L as we work with them to get the documentation and based on a lot of their experiences.
Okay, because that'll be an issue because Blackboard's not available. This happened with Angel when they didn't come through. I didn't even have the model to recreate because they were just gone. And I couldn't go back to the old system and say, well, what was the question in the first place? And so.
Liz, can you share the question with us just so that I can make a note of it?
Or,
yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, let me see. Let me try this here. Okay.
Just so that we can make a note of it on what the issues are. That was kind of our side effect of this meeting would be maybe we could put down some issues that we could share back with senior online.
Okay, so this is where we are. This is where I am in Blackboard. So let me actually, I'm sorry, that's where I am in D2L. And so in Blackboard, just to give you an idea, no, that's not it. So in Blackboard in this question, it would look something like this. So this is here it is. There it goes, right? So this is a calculated formula question where people are using a growth rate rule to approximate a growth rate, okay? And so then when I go to the problem set, I just preview, start. Right, so these tables go, but these are what the random questions come up as. So the calculated formula questions did not come over. And that actually, I've just looked at 2 problem sets that has calculated formula questions, and they both do the same thing. They don't like it. No likey.
And these are built with Blackboard's editor?
Yes, they're built with the calculated formula. Right? So I have one variable, right? I have a variable, Well, actually, this is more than one. Maybe that's the problem. So I have two variables in this case being drawn randomly.
That is the problem when you have multiple variables. That was the problem that Casey ran into.
Okay. Okay, so I just made a note of it. John and I will see if we can find out if there's a way around this for
Casey
getting
has
those
been
over.
working on this, and there doesn't seem to be a solution at this point, which is
Okay.
troubling.
Well, is the solution for porting too, or just a solution for recreating as well?
For recreating as well, because you can even use that strategy you use of doing it outside and importing, because there is no import for numeric questions.
But if you created a numeric question in D2L, can you have more than one random variable? Because one solution is to go through before I port a course and change it, and fix the value of one variable, right?
Right,
So
and
I
then
only
go
have
back and
one, and
create
then
it.
when I import it, I could make the other one random again. I mean,
That
that's a
should
huge
work.
amount of work, but
That should work, but that would at least give you, yeah.
yeah, at least I'd have the questions.
I think it works when you have one, but not with more than one.
Okay, let me see if I can go find one that has just one. Let's see if that's true. All right.
I'm relying mostly on what Casey has said, because there have been a number of exchanges about that earlier.
Okay. Now, that's really important to know, obviously, for people who have that kind of a question set. This is a big problem, and I hope there can be a solution to it.
Well, as you find these problems and have questions about this, I would encourage you to provide a screenshot. Liz, I took a screenshot of what you
Okay.
had. This way, as we work with them, perhaps they can tell us what is feasible and what is not feasible at this time. But I just want to say there are so many things that we are still so unsure of, because again, this is a sandbox. This is not our actual instance.
Is that the dog or Doug?
I think Doug was snoring. Mute. Sorry, Doug, I just muted you.
Well, that was unexpected.
I was muted.
You are now, you weren't.
I think it was your dog, Doug. That's what it sounded like.
Now, there's a couple things in chat. There was a fill in the blank question, which didn't quite come in. Jessica mentioned that when she tried using a common cartridge, that didn't open, so she used a Blackboard export. And Jennifer mentioned something about a problem similar for a fill in the blank question. Okay. And also with images. So, I think we'll have to see what happens once we get the full implementation. This is a sandbox mostly for experimentation. And there will be some glitches. I know many of us experienced some dramatic ones when we moved from Angel to Blackboard. I had to redo thousands of questions in my course because it lost every single link to an image. When you mentioned that you had the same issue with images, Mamta, is it they're not appearing or something broke with them?
No, they're not appearing at all. So the blank space comes in and says there was supposed to be an image here. And I can share my screen if you would like.
Sure.
Yeah. So let me share my screen. So this is what happens. That's what is shown. So I guess because that's images in Blackboard, so it is not
when you
shown.
exported, you probably chose to link to the images. And that was the thing I suggested when Ramin was doing it, that you choose to not only copy links, but also copy the actual files themselves, because if it copies the files, then the files will be there. My guess is it's trying to link to an image in Blackboard, and you don't want to link to images in Blackboard when you're in Desire to Learn.
Okay.
So when
could you repeat again, John? Sorry.
If you use the Blackboard export, make sure you select the option for files to copy the actual files and not just links to the files.
Okay. Okay.
because otherwise it's going to try to link to things in Blackboard that will go away. You won't have permission to access any of the files that are stored within Blackboard in Desire to Learn. So make sure you copy the files and not just a link to the files.
Gotcha.
But the common cartridge, as Greg said, should be safer, although Jessica mentioned that the common cartridge didn't open. We'll find out more about this as we get close to the actual migration. But
yeah, I'm glad that actually happened to you, Mamta, because that's going to be a big issue. I have probably a couple of hundred files that that would need to come over too, along with so just the link is not enough.
Okay.
You can't link back to Blackboard, obviously, for the obvious reasons.
Yeah.
From BrightSpace.
And I guess that's the reason why my hyperlinks are also not working, because some of them were within the Blackboard, you know, like when you are.
yeah, you
referring them-
don't. Yeah, you won't want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always rebuild them to things within Desire to Learn, but
Of course.
So just very quickly, what you're seeing on the screen is as an application that is zipped up that did come over, right? So when I clicked on it, it's there for me to download from BrightSpace. So you definitely want all your files to come over from Blackboard, not just the front-facing components.
I just want to remind everybody that as you do play with the Sandbox, please reach out to D2L support. They are responsive and they can answer a lot of these questions you may have. So if you're struggling, for example, by bringing over the common cartridge, reach out to them. They can tell you the best way to do this. Mamta, with some of your images, again, by showing them perhaps what the error messages you're getting, the same thing. Liz, I think yours is, again, related to some of the things that Casey and Jeff do, and those are the things that we still need to really ask more questions about. But I just want to remind everybody that at this time, when you're running into these little issues and problems, the best thing to do is to contact D2L directly. And within the courses, or when you're in the Sandbox, there is a way there's a link where you can present your questions to them.
So before we go, I just want to say we are in the first cohort, as I think most of you know. So there'll be a set of courses this summer, I believe, that will be using D2L's BrightSpace. I think the more we play with the Sandbox this semester and these problems arise, the more smoothly that cohort is going to operate this summer, frankly. I mean, that's kind of the basic thought that John and I had, that, you know, get more people on, you know, because you lose nothing, right? I mean, I didn't think twice about importing my course into the Sandbox. If it didn't work, it didn't work. Who cares? So it's all right. So you can't make any mistakes by, you know, impacting the students when they are actually taking your courses when you do it this way. So we encourage everybody to take the time to play with this Sandbox account. Easy to make one, easy to import stuff into it. And the more mistakes you find, the less mistakes I think people will have to then deal with when the courses are live this summer.
Now, there was a question earlier about accessibility and checking for accessibility. Right now, we're using Ally, which is owned by Blackboard. I don't know if there's going to be a SUNY-wide agreement to use Ally with Desire to Learn. My guess is probably not, because accessibility is actually built into Desire to Learn from the ground up, that there are some really good accessibility features built into anything that you create, that it's going to prompt you to add accessibility components as you go. I'm not sure what it has in the way of accessibility checks, though. Teresa, Greg, have you looked into that very much? Or Doug? Or Carrie?
John, we've seen it, and again, I've seen it not too long ago in the demo with them. I'm not going to be able to put my finger exactly on where it is, but there is At the page level, as you're editing content, you can run their accessibility checker against it. And like John just said, it really is good in terms of the feedback it gives you on things like color contrast and really helpful suggestions to correct. We'll be talking about that as we work with you on migration, but do know that there are some fairly usable tools built in that we'll expose you to later on.
And it's built in at the design stage, which is really that when you're creating content, it's built in right there, which is really the time to make the corrections rather than going back and trying to do it retroactively, which is another reason why you might want to consider building some things from the ground up within Desire to Learn. But you certainly aren't going to want to recreate all of your tests and other content that you want. But the tools for that are vastly superior for what we had in Blackboard, other than Ally, which is really good.
All right. Any other questions for us? We have kept you for almost the whole 50 minutes that we had planned. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody, and good luck.
And as Ramin said, feel comfortable playing with it. Try creating a test. Try creating some questions within it. Try using some of their agent tools and so forth, just to play with it, to see if it's something you might want to adopt as you move forward. Just try moving things around, rearranging things so that you get comfortable with it. I found the interface to be very, very intuitive compared to other learning management systems I've worked in. The only other one that works as well as Canvas, pretty much. So good luck and have fun.
All right, everybody. Take care.
Stop the recording.
All right. Good job, John. Take